Hello everybody, and welcome to a quick tutorial on how to use the Alchemy synthesizer as a sampler. Alchemy is a synth that comes free with Logic Pro, and it's a very versatile synth, sample based largely, but also has got a four oscillator capability, bank of effects, sequencers, LFOs, everything that you expect with a normal synth, but just that extra capability of being able to be used as a sampler. Now, a lot of people, when they use Logic Pro, they tend to use the EXS24 sampler, which is your workhorse sampler, which I don't mind, but I tend to find that Alchemy has a lot more versatility and you can mess around and play about a lot more with the samples. So I'm just going to demonstrate first off a simple chord progression, which I believe is G, F and C, and just going to play that through a very simple sawtooth patch. Okay, so that may or may not be familiar to you. It's actually the chord progression of Orinoco Flow by Enya. And those G, Fs and Cs are actually triad inversions. I don't know too much about music theory, but that's not what this tutorial is about. It's more about the capabilities of Alchemy as a sampler, sorry. So just to give you a bit of background, Orinoco Flow was actually partly composed on a synthesizer called the Roland D50, a very common synth, a linear synth that was used by quite a few bands such as Foreigner. Also, Gary Newman used it extensively in his work. A wonderful synth in itself, which I hope to acquire someday, but a far cheaper version for me to create this sound was to use a sample. And if you look on YouTube, you'll see a number of Roland D50 demonstration videos, and this patch that's common to Orinoco Flow always comes up, and it sounds like this. A kind of bell, kind of string, pizzicato string sound that features heavily on the song. And what I did was I went on YouTube, found a D50 tutorial, scrolled through it until that sound came up, and nearly every demonstration will demonstrate this sound because it's such a well-known sound. And I just converted that to a WAV format and really just chopped out that patch. Let me just enlarge that, zoom that up a bit so you can see that a bit better. So that's just the sample of that patch, and I've trimmed it quite neatly so that the sample starts immediately. You can see there's no gap there, and I've also left it a bit to trail off. And the reason for that is that when you're sampling any kind of particular one sound, one shot, it's always good to have the sound start as soon as you hit the sampler key, and also you don't want it to be chopped off, and you don't want it to end too quickly because that can result in quite strange kind of artifacts and weird noises. So I've got that sample, which I've also saved to the desktop. So now it's just a case of adding that to Alchemy. I'm just going to mute that, put that back on, and just loop this region. So here instead of the standard synthesizer, I'm going to select Alchemy. And for Alchemy users, you'll be familiar with this front screen, which has got all your patches and ways of modulating them, your delays and effects. But if you click in the Advanced tab, you can see a breakdown. This is like looking under the bonnet, really. You've got your 4 oscillators. But here I'm not interested in messing around with the various synth patches. What I'm going to do is actually clear all of them. And what it's done, it's really blanked out all the oscillators bar the first one. And into that, if I click that, the first option is to import audio, and this is where it'll start making sense as to how this thing works as a sampler. So I mentioned before that WAV, that loop, is saved to the desktop as Orinoco Stab. Double click that. You can see that it's been imported into oscillator A. Now the wonderful thing is that now we have a working sample, working sound that I've taken from a video, and it can actually be used as an instrument. And really, the fidelity and the way it's recreated it is, I think, it's remarkable how well it does this. Also, what's useful, what's very convenient here is that the key of the note, the key of C, has actually mapped to C, which is very useful. But you'll often find when you are taking a sample, chopping a sample out of a song or whatever, that it may the key may not correspond to C. And I think what Alchemy does, although I can't be too sure, is that it does intuitively listen to the pitch of the sample and tries to match it to a key. But if it doesn't do that, sorry, just skip to that bit very quickly. If it doesn't do that, if you go into the global tab, select A, and if you go into edit, you've got so much more functionality here where you can change the key to correspond to the key of the loop. You can change the volume. You can even tune it. So if you want a slightly detuned effect, you can do that. And here, obviously, you've got the graphical representation, the wave representation, the wave represented graphically as such, and you can move the markers to denote where the sample should start and where it should end. And oops, as I mentioned before, because I've spent a lot of time in actually chopping the sample out of the sound file, I'm not going to mess around too much with this because hopefully this should be good to go. So I'm just going to close that down, and now we have that sample loaded into Alchemy with that chord progression, and let's just hear how that sounds. Okay, so sounding a bit more like Orinoco Flow, still not quite there yet, and that's because we are missing a key element, and that is a very ethereal, atmospheric reverb. Again, we go back to Alchemy, and again, it proves to be a versatile, really good sampler in that it's got its own effects bar down here, and I was quite amazed as to how many effects that Alchemy has. It possesses tons of effects. So you've got two different types of reverbs, delays, you've got distortion, equalizers, compressors, and they all work really well. And the way that Alchemy works, to me certainly, it just makes sense as to how you link each oscillator to the reverbs. I mean, you've also got sequences in there, modulation map, multi-sequence envelope generators, and LFOs, and they can all link. I'm not going to mess about too much with those because once you start adding all these effects to samples, you tend to lose a bit of sample integrity. But effects are fine, and to this particular sample, I'm going to add a bit of reverb, and I was messing about with this earlier and I found a particular reverb setting. If you actually look, when you select reverb, you have this file button with a number of preset reverb types, and if I pick, yeah, it was the bright long reverb. Let's just hear how that sounds. Really nice. So we're already getting that reverb on there. That's so characteristic of the song. One thing more I'd like to do is add another separate Logic Pro X reverb plugin, just to really push it over the edge in terms of space, because this song really embodies that kind of ethereal big sound, and I think as good as Alchemy's reverb plugin is, I think it just needs that bit more to boost it. So that's great. So I think that's more or less, hopefully, the way that you recognize that characteristic sound in Orinoco Flow. And that's it. So that's a quick demonstration of how Alchemy can be used as a brilliant sampler in my humble opinion. So much that you can do with it later on, and because you've got 4 oscillators, you can actually import 4 separate samples to really create some weird composite sounds. So that's it. I'd just like to finish by saying thank you for watching. Please leave any comments, feedback, and also thank you to all my followers and listeners. Be ready for some new material, some cover music, as well as the original material. And I'll finish by playing this out, and I've just added a bit of piano to it as well. Thank you.